Thanks for stopping by, guys. It is crunch time to get this 240 ready for a drift event in the next couple days. I have a couple very important things to do to the car before the event, and if we have time, I want to install the rest of the interior. But we'll see if we get that far. My number one concern right now is that the car is idling very lean. And also when it is entering boost and I'm starting to accelerate, it pegs rich. So it pegs rich accelerating and it's max lean on idle. That tells me there's most likely a vacuum leak. So we're gonna have to diagnose that. Second most important thing, I need to mount my hydro. I don't really need it to drift, but it's more of like a safety, you know what I mean? This is actually still attached to my old transmission tunnel. I just cut it out because I was like, I don't feel like taking off of those bolts. We'll do that later. So we'll get to that. And then I want to put the Z-brakes on the front. I used to have Z-brakes on my car, but Franzi needed brakes on her 240, and I was like, you know what? Just take my Z-brakes for now. They're already prepped, painted, new pads, rotors, whatever. So now I have base brakes. These are actually off of her car. I think it's funny. I have stocks in the front and I have dual Z32 calipers in the back. Kind of backwards. So right off the bat, I'll get this thing started and I'll show you how it runs lean and we'll start diagnosing it. All the way to lean. Look at that. Max lean. Also, the vacuum is at 18. Usually it was around 20. And this is the water temp. To make this easier to find a leak, you're gonna turn off the fans. Luckily the car is still pretty cold, so it won't overheat on us. Alright, fans are off, it's much quieter. Now we can start listening for any obvious hissing noises. Not really hearing any. Well, if you're having a hard time finding a leak visually or just by hearing it, you can also spray brake clean along all the ports and connections and whatnot and see if the idle changes. Now, unfortunately, I'm out of brake clean, so we're going to use carb cleaner. It's like the same exact thing. No change, nothing obvious. And it's still pegged lean. Let's try this side. Well, there's not many connections on this side. Kind of sketchy to be spraying this on an exhaust manifold. This is highly flammable. But you gotta do what you gotta do. Oh, you hear how it idled up? Look at that, 14, 15. Oh, I think I found it. I think it's actually the wastegate. Alright, well, luckily we have another wastegate. Now if you guys remember, I recently replaced that turbo. That was actually the turbo from Cho FDM. We traded parts or whatever, and it works great. But this is my old turbo that I took off. The turbine wheel exploded on both sides. There's no more wheel. Luckily, this wastegate never leaked on me, so I know that's good. And honestly, this looks really easy to replace, which is unlike anything else on these cars, I feel like. 2 bolts and a little C-clip. Let's get that knocked out. It's actually a 13mm. Random. I thought the only 13mm was the hatch nuts. Take off this little C-clip very carefully. So tiny. Wow, that was so fast. And this is vacuum actuated. And all it does is open and close this little port. Whoop. That prevents the turbo from overboosting and blowing up your engine. Good to have. It's like the easiest part ever to replace on this engine. This thing's gonna be so hot because it was just running. Looks the same to me. This one is a little bent. That's from the shock tower hitting these tabs. Pretty crazy to think. Alright, this guy on here. Slide this little clip on there. Hopefully we don't lose it. It's so hot. Ah! You got it. Test it. Good. And most importantly, don't forget to plug your vacuum port back in. Well, I think we're ready for a test drive. Got to make sure it still boosts correctly, right? This isn't the first time I've seen a wastegate go out. They usually end up leaking out of the seal that's internal to this diaphragm. It's kind of like a brake booster. Well, we should probably verify that it's not lean at idle. Yo, it worked. 14.7. It would have been max lean by now. And 20 inches of vacuum. Perfect. Well, the test drive was successful, but it's time to get some food. Yo, that was wild. You good, bro?
Yeah, I fucked up my wrist.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, I'm so glad that worked, dude.
That was sick, dude. Oh my god, I can't wait to watch that.
Yeah.
Is the burger done yet? Oh, that side is.
That's true.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely stayed in frame too. Let that yoga work. Oh, damn it!
Yeah! Insane. Oh my gosh. The one where he like nearly face planted, the board actually sliced the back of his ear. Oh yeah, that's a gnarly one. I hope you guys didn't mind a little skateboarding detour. It's really hard to pass up a cookout at your local skate park. Back in the garage. Let's knock out the hydro. Just because I'm dreading doing this the most. It still has the tiny little mount on the bottom. So I'm going to take that off to begin with. This is supposed to be the reinforcement. That was horrible, honestly. The hydro would wobble back and forth so much, so I temporarily welded in these side mounts just to hold it in place better. We'll make something work. We'll make this work better than it was. A little piece of the old trans tunnel. Right to the bin. The hydro is all cleaned up. I took off the line just for now while we're mounting it. And I also took off the welded mount that I had on the side. So now let's see how this will fit in the car. In order to do that, we're going to need to mount the center console and then the radio bezel trim. I guess maybe we don't need to mount this. We'll mount it either way, just to get a good idea. And since this is a push type hydro, the master cylinder actually goes forward, which is uncommon for most of them. I like this one because you can actually tuck it under the dash so that all you see is just the rod. Oh, that fits pretty good. And I had it scooted ever so slightly to the point where you can still fit a double din radio. Make sure we can still get into fifth. Well, I think this is just about where I want to put it, and I'm pretty sure that's exactly where it was before. I like it when you can have your hand on the wheel, shifter, and the e-brake right in the middle. We'll take our trusty blue marker and draw a little outline. Now, ideally, I should probably strip the interior so that I can grind the paint and junk off of this trans tunnel so I can get a nice good weld onto this base plate. And while I have the interior stripped, I wanted to spray some of this epoxy primer. That way all these welds don't surface rust. So I guess we'll start stripping her down. Alright, now we have the wires hanging in the air. Now yes, I probably should have epoxied this floor before wiring the entire car together and test driving it and getting windows installed. But here we are. We're just gonna roll with it. Now I am going to need to grind off some of the surface rust that is already forming on some of these welds. Then I'll vacuum it and wipe it down really good, and then we will spray it, because we don't want to spray it as it is. because that will just encapsulate the rust that's already on it and all these little metal flakes. Alright, the floors are ready, all prepped. But the thing is with this epoxy primer is that it only lasts for 48 hours once it's activated. It has a hardener within it, so I'm gonna have to use this whole can basically. So I think what I'm gonna do instead is mount the hydro first, because then I can spray epoxy around it. Now I wanted to make this accessible and make it so you can remove the hydro, but now I'm thinking I might as well just make this base plate a part of the car. So with that being said, I'm gonna weld these Allen bolts to the frame itself so that they become studs, and that will be a lot easier to take this off instead of trying to wedge an Allen key all the way in there while it's shoved under the dash. So I already got the ground clamp connected to here. I already prepped that area on the trans tunnel right here, so I should probably spray weld through primer on there first. Now it is a little difficult to see the outline that we made because we grinded it off and sprayed weld through primer on it, but this is about where it was and feels about the same when it was in 5th. And I also went ahead and grinded some of the paint off the bottom so we can get a nice weld between the trans tunnel and the mount itself. So the hydro is welded in. I welded each corner and then the middle as well. Now here's the thing with these cars. The metal is so thin, so when you move it left and right, the whole trans tunnel flexes. So I had to do this before. I made this little reinforcement plate that goes from the top off to the side, and that kind of stabilized it a little better. But before I welded it on there, I just want to show you how much flex it has. Now there is some play in this rod, but you can still see the whole base moving. Or maybe you can't, I don't know. Added 2 little supports, and now that's solid. Just has the rod play, which is totally normal. Alright, we are ready to spray the floors finally. Now this is a new can to me, but apparently you have to press in this button on the bottom and it activates the hardener. So you put it upside down and then you push down. I heard it. And it says shake for 2 more minutes. Now we just sit and let that dry. So smoky. Looks so crazy. Alright, our epoxy primer is all dry. And we can now put on the carpet finally. I did end up closing the garage door because it started downpouring. And funny enough, this is actually the original carpet to the car. And this is single cam carpet. You can tell by the unique stitching. My personal favorite. And I cannot wait to have this feel like a cozy car again. Oh, I forgot I taped up the shifter to prevent paint from getting on it. Wait, where'd the carpet go? Ah! Before I install the rest of my interior, I need to put on the hydro line first. And here it is, it's all still connected. Well, at least the joint. And I think this might be easier to fish up from the back. Alright, got it fished up all the way to here. I taped up that fitting so we didn't get any overspray on it. Now the rear lines go to each caliper in the back, and I stick them through the seatbelt holes. Now I'm not going to do that just yet, because if I have to move the car, that's just going to get wrapped up in it. But this is starting to look a lot better with carpet. It's crazy how much of a difference it makes with just carpet alone. I think the next thing we'll do is get the dash on there so we can put our gauges back in, and then mount the center console officially. Then I need to see if I have all of these panels. I don't even know if I still have them. Wait, where'd the dash go? Ah. As for the center console, let's see if we got this measurement right. And moment of truth, let's see if the hydro clears. I think we nailed it. Alright, I have a couple more pieces I want to throw on. We have the shift boot cover. This goes over the shifter. It keeps all the hot air out basically. And this is the little ring that you use to hold it down. It's actually already cut out because that's where the hydro was last time. This will help clean things up. This is the steering wheel cover, the top piece. I don't know where the bottom piece went. I can only find the top. And this is the this is the panel for the left side. Little 8-pillar trim here. It's busted. I'm gonna have to find another one of those, but I guess we'll just run this for now. So yeah, so far so good. This is turning out really nice. I hope I have time to put new fabric on. This is, I mean, Also, I have no idea where the armrest cover went. Oh man, I forgot to order an RB25 shifter boot. Funny enough, that's still on the to-do list on the side of the car. Oh well, at least that's an easy piece to do. I always wondered what this said. Maybe I'll do the Google Translate really quick. Oh, it's like a warning label for having a turbo. Engine oil, okay. Do not use 5W30? Really? Be sure to replace the please use. I feel like that could be wrong. Pretty interesting. And although this lower A-pillar trim was busted, I was able to find another one in my box. And this is actually the JDM version. You can tell because it has the flare mounts on it. I think that's pretty interesting that 90s Japanese cars came with flares. Same thing with my Integra. The right-hand drive clip came with a little flare with a mount for it. Interesting little details. And I can't find this clip. It's kind of bothering me. I'm sure Omar has one, but for now, this will do. I just think it's wild how there's actually some creases in the carpet from it being so crunched in the crash. But the fact that this is the same carpet is insane. I wanted to install the rear plastics next, but I just remembered that this one disintegrated in the crash. The whole side of it's busted off. This one's fine. And another thing, I don't even have seatbelts in this car. And I don't know if I want to go through the hassle of trying to install the automatic seatbelts all over again, although I might have to. But before I do that, I want to see if Integra seatbelts work. Might as well, right? I mean, that's kind of our only option at this point, because I don't even have the automatic seatbelts here. So far, so good. This is the only issue I'm running into right now. Where am I going to put this? This is supposed to connect in front of this point. Actually, there's the seatbelt here, which obviously I will not be using because that's part of the automatic seatbelt system. Although this part is not automatic. The lap belt you have to put on manually. But since we're not using that, I wonder if it'll thread into that hole. Very interesting little piece. Surprisingly enough, these threads are the same as well. That's pretty crazy. Now I am going to have to make a new hole in the carpet because this is where the hole is that we're trying to line up. It's official. They are fitting so far. Now we need to figure out the buckle, but I also just realized I just put the left side seatbelt on the right side of the car. So I actually need to move this seatbelt to that side. And if you're wondering why the seatbelts are directional, left versus right side, if I mount a left side on the right side, it is now facing the opposite direction it was designed to be in. When you hit the brakes really hard, the seatbelt locks up. So basically the sensors within the seatbelt will be in the wrong direction. They're not electrical sensors, they're mechanical, but they are labeled left versus right. Just got the other one on this side, and that side's already done. Just got this one off. Let's see if this fits the rails on the seats that we have. This is the left side, which means same side as that. Okay. So the buckle should go right here. Are these threads the same? No way it fits in there. That's insane. Integra seatbelts on a 240. I'm gonna have to figure out how I'm gonna make these seatbelts work with the B-pillar trim. Actually, now I'm thinking it's probably this B and C pillar that differs between the manual and auto seatbelts. Probably gonna have to make a cut on here somewhere. Let's line it up on the car and get an idea of what we're working with. Oh, there's a clip so close to it. So it looks like I can actually clip this on with no problem. So with that being said, I'll probably just make a little slit in there just so the seatbelt can come out. Because it doesn't need to be the whole buckle that's exposed, you know what I mean? All right, I've drawn a line of where I think I want to cut this. What do we think? I need to put some type of trim around that to really clean it up, but I think it'll get the job done for now. And I can't even find the other side. I'm pretty sure that one just exploded. So you're not gonna believe this. I just did some digging in my hoard stash of S13 parts, and I came across an entire interior set. This is the interior out of that black hatch in the junkyard, and I'm glad I took all of it when I did, because now I need it. So luckily I will have all the trim for the left side. I was starting to get worried because I really didn't want to just run half interior. Oh man, all the clips are on here too. Amazing. Well, I can't really put on this pillar all the way as well as the A pillar because I need to redo the headliner. My old headliner was for a sunroof model, which is destroyed anyways. But I did pick up a slick top headliner, and this one came like this. It's got this fabric on it, and it's just horrible. Alright, I think I'm getting too ahead of myself on the interior. This is supposed to be a drift prep video. So here's all the Z brakes that I have to work with, and the calipers that are closest to me are off of the Silver Z in the junkyard. And these I've just had, I don't even remember where I got these. I've had them for years. And I finally got the front conversion lines in the mail, and I ordered some new pads and rotors. So here we got the fronts, and I ordered rears, and they sent fronts. So I have 2 sets of front rotors. And no parts store around here has the rotors, because unlike most cars, the 300ZX has vented rear rotors. Usually they're just solid, but no, the Z has big brakes, so hopefully that rotor's fine. But I really wanted to replace it. I'm gonna have to replace it down the line anyways, but for now we need to at least get the hydro bled and front brake calipers installed on the car. So I guess the first step is just jacking it up and taking the wheels off. Except I don't know where I put the jack handle. Now as for the calipers, I started taking off the stock brake lines that were on them, and the first one came off very nicely. This one looks great. The second one was already rounded off, so that's going to be a mission. So then I was like, alright, I have another right side caliper, let's use this one. Take off that line, strips the threads out. That's the downside about these calipers being aluminum. Yes, they're lightweight, but with the steel inserts for the brake lines, it's just bound to strip eventually. Well, this one's good to go. I just need to clean it up. But since this one's stripped out, that means I have to use this one, which means I have to try and extract this stripped fitting. So what I plan to do is weld a nut to the top of this, and hopefully it'll come out. But that's not looking too promising because of how rusty it is. Buh. Alright, I let this monstrosity cool off for a little bit. Let's see if it comes off now. Woo-wee. Oh, look at that trophy. How are the threads looking? Actually, not bad. That is probably usable. We'll try and fit our line in there. And if the line works, then we're good to go. It's threading. Alright, I'm going to clean these up really quick. They look gross. Since these are aluminum, they polish up really nice with just a wire wheel. That's a crazy before and after. Nothing too crazy, just a light grind on it. So it's beginning to install the new calipers and rotors on this side of the car, but then this happened. I forgot that there's 3 different types of Z calipers. There's a 26mm aluminum, 30mm aluminum, and a 30mm iron. These are aluminum, so that means they're either 26mm or 30mm. And what that measurement means is the rotor thickness. So for all 3 calipers, they all take the same 280 width rotor. So that doesn't matter, but the thickness is what changes. So you measure it like this, and this is a 30mm rotor. Now, when I started to put the bolts into the back here on the knuckle, the caliper started hitting the rotor, so the rotor doesn't spin, which tells me that these are not 30mm calipers. So kind of unfortunate, but basically did all that work just to not be able to run these brakes right now. So I'm gonna have to order 26mm rotors, and hopefully I'll receive the correct rear rotors this time. Quick way to check what rotors to get is by just measuring the inside here. This is where the rotor would go. Take that out. Our measurement here is exactly 30mm. If we put a 30mm rotor in a 30mm space, it's gonna rub. Now I have heard of people grinding off this area to fit the rotor. I'm not gonna do that. Brakes are one of those things I'm not messing with like that. Luckily, I didn't disconnect the brake line. I just set the caliper off to the side, the stock one, so I don't need to re-bleed the front brakes. But dang, that's unfortunate. I really wanted to see how these looked with the chrome wheels. Chrome on chrome. Alright, we got the stock brakes back on. Now, let's focus on putting in the hydro e-brake lines. So remember where we left off. Let's lay this flat. Alright, I guess we'll see where those ended up. Here's a differential, and this is the line that came out on the right-hand drive driver's side. So we need to make this line come out all the way to this bottom caliper. Pull it out. And we don't want this to be anywhere near the axle, so I'm going to try and route it out of the way. So I ended up routing it through this hole in the subframe, and that was the perfect distance to get it right here. I used an open wrench just to get it bottomed out, but when I'm tightening it, I like to use the line wrench because I don't want to strip it out. Alright, not too tight, because remember, these are aluminum, but also not too loose. You don't want them leaking. Heavy medium. The lines are fully connected. The very next step is to bleed the hydro. And this is exactly why I didn't put all of this together yet. Although I probably should have waited to put the dash on. That would have made this a lot easier. The reservoir is all the way in here. I'm definitely going to need a funnel. There's no way. Alright, here's my solution. I just smashed a rubber hose onto my funnel. Now I can just fit it in there. But I ended up having someone help me bleed the brakes. Basically the process was pull it 3 times and then hold it pretty hard. And then while they were holding it, I went ahead and cracked the bleeder screws on each caliper on both sides. And I did that until there was no more air bubbles. Now you want to be careful when you're doing this that you don't run out of brake fluid in the master cylinder. Because if you do, you got to restart. But alright, now I need to just top off the brake fluid, throw some wheels on, test drive. We got to make sure the brakes lock, right? Fluid is topped off, just verifying that there's no leaks. It works. Another successful test drive. Although we didn't get the Z-brakes on the car, we were able to fix the idle issue and the running rich issue, which happened to be the same problem, and then also get the hydro working. And to finish off the drift prep, I'm going to do a full nut and bolt check. I usually like to go over the rear suspension first, then work my way up. Just literally checking every single nut and bolt, making sure they're tight. But thank you guys for sticking around for another video. I'll see you guys next time. I think for the next video, I'm going to try and squeeze in an interior install, but maybe not. We'll see. We'll see this thing sliding in no time. The drift event is literally tomorrow.